I DM'd some of my favorite music producers asking for advice on being a music producer in 2024 and 2025, and here's what they had to say. Alright, so first up we got a music producer YouTube legend, MaxShooter49, and he actually blessed us with a voice message. So let's go ahead and hear what he had to say.
I want everybody to understand that music production and anything that you love is just like an ocean. Just because you love the ocean doesn't mean you should drown in it. Take your breaks and don't let your mental health be corroded because of placements or quote-unquote false growth that you think you might have because of social comparison.
Yeah, that's super real advice. I can definitely relate to that. I know burnout is a thing that I don't see a lot of producers in my feed talking about, so that might be something interesting to talk more about. But taking breaks is definitely important, especially as like a full-time creative. I remember when I first quit my job to make music full-time, I put that above like everything else, like my physical health, my mental health, and that took like a huge toll on my body. I don't recommend doing that at all. I'm still recovering from that low-key. Next up, we have RJPasin. You've probably seen this dude all over TikTok and YouTube Shorts. He's really blown up in the past year or so. And he says, work ethic wins over talent, make new ideas every day, and get comfortable making things that you don't think are great. Show up for work regardless of how you feel and put the reps in and be patient. Eventually you have some great stuff on your hands. And put yourself out there. There's no better time to make money as a producer without having to get placements. Posting content and putting your own music on streaming platforms is a great way to build your own brand, which will in turn give you leverage for working with people you want to work with. I totally believe work ethic beats talent when it comes to being in the music industry. Because just from what I've seen of all the producers and artists that do this full time and seeing how they work and how productive they are, like most of the time they really are making music every single day. Especially because I feel like making music is almost like a muscle that you gotta like work out if it's something that you want to do professionally, like as a career. Because there's been times where I've gotten into slumps or burnout where I'm not as productive musically and I try to transition into going super hard again and I just can't. Like it's like I'm too sore. I gotta like work up to that point almost. And it sucks because I remember before I'd be able to crank out like 10 beats in a day and it's like I struggle just to finish a loop. And he's right. There is no better time to make money as a producer without having to chase placements. Working with the Heat agency and seeing all the people in my own network of producers and artists, there's so much money to be made in music production online, and like the people making content and making videos and selling products a lot of times are making so much more money than some of these rappers out here you see on Instagram trying to flex. And having a typey channel is how I was first able to quit my job and do music full time, and that took me posting a beat every single day on YouTube for 6 months before it started to actually work and make any kind of money. And that was after multiple attempts of daily posting years before that. So when I was doing that, I was definitely making musical ideas every single day. And a lot of that stuff wasn't great, honestly, but that didn't matter. It was good enough and I made it and I just had to release it into the world. All right, next up we got another YouTube legend. We got Chambers. And he said, I know it sounds basic, but the best advice I can give is to just not give up. If you can get through the challenges and difficult times without deciding to stop trying, you're already ahead of most people. Just got to keep pushing. And that's definitely true. I think the only reason why I'm successful as a music producer is because I never stopped trying and I never quit for too long before I started posting music again. But it definitely is super hard in the beginning. I remember being in the first few years of doing music production and, you know, trying to make it a career, and it was definitely, it felt impossible at times. And that period when you're trying to figure things out and get your first initial buzz, that can usually a lot of times take, if you're lucky, months, but most of the time realistically years. And that's the period where most producers and artists just give up because it's hard. But I realized this a few years ago. The only reason you will not make it in the music industry or whatever creative pursuit you're in is if you don't ever give up. Because the only thing that's ever going to stop you from making it is you quitting. Like there's never going to be any external factors preventing you. It's always going to be a battle against yourself. All right, next up we got somebody else you're probably familiar with if you watch a lot of producer YouTube content, and that's Cody. He's a producer on Internet Money known for working with artists like Juice WRLD, Don Toliver, Lil Tecca, Lil Uzi Vert, so many more. And he said biggest advice would be a real fan fan of the music and dive into whatever genre or lane you want to come up in. If you want to produce for an artist, you should have no problem listening through their entire discography to really capture where their inspirations draw from and what they're trying to have their music convey about them as people. It's a producer's job to kind of be able to understand and articulate things for the artist that they might not be able to articulate and put into words themselves. Whether they realize it or not, they're looking for a producer who speaks their language, or lack of a better term. Everything is fundamental, so those roots are the most important before moving on to basic, broad questions and answers about how to market yourself. Sometimes it's more important to focus on these fundamental things before jumping into other aspects that seem obvious to ask about, but most people try to crack the code to those questions without having a solid foundation to begin with. Definitely look to find artists you can help mold. That will most likely be small artists, and coming up with a small artist is much more satisfying than getting that big song with the big artist who couldn't give a fuck about who you are even after the song drops. Avoid placement chasing. Look to work with artists you believe in and have a handful of those guys you work with and put your energy into. If a big opportunity comes along, take it, but don't be going for the home run every time, because the reality isn't as sweet as people think it is getting a shot in the dark song with a bigger artist. It's not as fulfilling even though it seems more enticing. And that's some super good advice right there, really. I feel like being a real fan of music and listening to a lot of it just isn't talked about enough on music producer YouTube. Everybody's so caught up in like quick hacks and how to do things fast, how to make new beats fast, how to make more. Like having a solid foundation is key to doing this stuff full time. And I feel like a lot of people are probably trying to skip a lot of the first steps that a lot of musicians and producers take in general in their careers. You know, the small things like just being in a lot of sessions with artists and figuring out how that works, you know, the social dynamic of that, or even just basically communicating with other musicians and producers beyond just texting or watching YouTube videos. Because sometimes it's a lot harder to communicate musical ideas than you think. Not everybody hears music the same, and not everybody thinks the same and expresses their words exactly like you do. So being able to connect with other musicians and artists and understand the vibes that they're trying to go for and the sound that they want, even if they don't really know it, that's key. And if you don't know how to do that, then that kind of makes everything else that goes into making money as a musician really hard. And working and coming up with smaller artists is definitely a lot more satisfying than working with bigger ones for sure. I think a lot of the things that kept me motivated in the first few years of me making music was the small successes I had with like small underground rappers. Like back when I had 0 placements, never sold a beat, anything like that. But I was able to produce a song that got 30,000 views, 50,000 views, and got put up on YouTube channels that I really listened to a lot at the time. And those small successes with the smaller artists definitely motivated me a lot more than how the bigger placements I've gotten would have back then. Like, it's definitely a lot more satisfying. Even though the bigger placements and songs have money and all that, I still remember the first time a song of mine that I produced like cracked 100K on Spotify. Like that was crazy. Or the first time it cracked 1 million too. And it's also just a lot more sustainable for you as your career. Like, it's a lot easier to break into music when you come up with an artist versus just trying to piggyback on any kind of major placement you can get on. Because yeah, like you said, a lot of these artists aren't gonna give a fuck about you. So you can have a lot more of a solid footing in the industry if you're someone like a 40 or a Boy Wonder who comes up with a big artist like Drake. All right, next up we got a producer named Jdolla. He's known for his songs with Drake, Yeet, Nicki Minaj, Lucky, and so many more. I used to make a lot of beats with this dude back in like 2020, 2021. So it's definitely super dope to see how far he's come up as a producer. And he says, my advice is to learn to love the process more than the results. Don't tie your motivations to things that aren't in your control. That's just straight facts. A lot of people that are in love with the idea of being a music producer or the idea of being an artist never make it, because the idea of being a professional producer and the reality are two separate things. Like, it's not all glamorous. Like, there's a lot of hard work that goes into it. You have to love the process, love the work, because you're gonna be doing it 10, 12 hours a day for years at a time. And if you don't love it, you're just gonna fall off. Next up, we got Akachi. You've probably seen him on the Producer Grind channel breaking down his placement with Yeet. He's also got songs with PNB Rock, Chief Keef, and Rod Wave. And he said, for me, the most important aspect of my career that has led me to be successful is consistency and overall healthy habits. I'm always trying my best to eat healthy as well as practice healthy habits in order to stay motivated and be able to outlast my colleagues. At the end of the day, this shit is a competition and I have to be in peak mental and physical shape to reach my goals. I think there's a duality though when it comes to the work. It's important to work hard without overworking yourself. Take time to live and be inspired. Enjoy the journey. Happiness is a journey, not a destination. I've known so many people who are incredibly talented that could never get their head on their shoulders. Seriously, I've seen many. Another huge piece is understand nobody owes you anything. Don't get down and take things personal in the industry, and stay focused on being the best you. Practice hard and daily, but make sure you're refueling. Lastly, it's key to be yourself. I've gone as far as I have, not by trying to be anyone but myself. Even if I wish my beats would hit exactly like D Rich or 88, the fact that they don't and I make different decisions makes me me. And never be afraid to show love. Healthy habits is a big one. That's something that I've been working on a lot lately. So like I said, I neglected a lot of my health before when I first started doing music as a pro. But there definitely is a duality. I remember back a few years ago, there's like so many producers on social media always like saying like, oh, I made 10 beats today, 10, 15 beats every single day. There was like a super big like hustle grind culture. And that's cool and all. Like there was definitely a period where I was like cranking out beats too and like going super hard with the quantity. Just gotta know when to like fall back, because you can't be in go mode like that 24/7, like 12 months a year. That's just insane. Not taking things personal is huge too. I had to learn that a lot, especially in the beginning. When you realize that no one owes you anything in this industry, it makes it so much easier to not take things personal. Sometimes relationships and connections in the industry are, you know, like friendships, and you know, that happens a lot, but there's definitely a lot of times where artists and producers don't want to be friends, and that's totally cool. You just can't take it personal. All right, next up we got another producer I've been a fan of for a really long time, MorgothBeatz. He's worked with Juice WRLD, MGK, Bones, Scarlord, and many more. And he said, I would refine your taste in music. Listen to multiple genres other than the ones you already know how to create. If you gain an understanding of how different music styles work in terms of songwriting and structure, you can use some of those tricks in your own music. I did this a lot, especially in the beginning of my production career, because I didn't start making music when I started making beats. I started making music a long time before I even made beats, because I've been playing guitar and playing in bands since I was like 15 years old. And I started making beats till I was like 19. And the music I was playing on the guitar was a lot of times the complete opposite of like rap and hip hop. Like I come from like the metal and hardcore world. The really interesting thing to me at the time when I came into music production was there was a lot of blending of that world with hip hop, you know, with the underground SoundCloud scene, like Suicide Boys, Puya, all that. Like that was really big at the time when I first started making beats. So that was what I started making first, which made a lot of sense because I came from that musical world. It made sense that I would blend that with rap and hip hop when I started making and learning about production. Next up, we got a producer named Mike Hector. He's known for his work with artists like Kendrick Lamar, Denzel Curry, Doja Cat, and Frank Ocean. And he says, build a sound with up-and-coming artists and producers and focus on making things that make people feel something instead of trying to impress them. And that's 100% facts. I've always noticed when it comes to my own production, the loops that I tend to end up using and that I'm looking for are the ones that make me feel something emotionally. But it's really just about capturing a certain vibe or emotion, especially something that I usually wouldn't make myself. I think there's a big thing with some producers just making beats to impress other producers, and you know, that's fine if you're into beat battles and instrumental music and stuff like that, but if you're trying to make actual songs with real artists, then you've got to tailor your production to that instead of trying to impress other producers with how sick your beats are. And again, that's repeated advice of coming up and building an original sound with up and coming artists. I think that's something you're gonna see a lot of these producers say. All right, next up, if you're a fan of Mike Hector, then you probably know Steven Shaeffer too. He's got songs with Tory Lanez and new one with Glorilla, BC the Don, and Junie. And he says, find your circle and build from the ground up with them. Music industry isn't a test of who has the best beats or who can network the best. It's who can put up and deal with the most bullshit and setbacks and still keep going. Build an online personal brand and focus on building a community of your own fans, one at a time. Move to LA. Doing 100 songs with smaller artists will do more for you than one song with a big artist. And learn how to play an instrument. It helps you get in rooms. It is definitely a test of who can put up with the most bullshit and setbacks and not quit, because there is a lot of bullshit and setbacks in the music industry, especially when you get to like working with record labels and trying to get money from them. You know, there's a lot of producers that fade away just because of that. It's just so hard. So being able to put up with that for a long term is definitely key. And that's another one for building your own online community and fan base, you know, just like RJPasin did. Like if you have your own audience and a community that's fans of you and supports you, you don't need to rely on getting placements and getting advances from them to sustain yourself as a music producer. Like you don't have to rely solely on royalty checks. You can launch your own business and start creating your own income sources. And move to LA is real as fuck. That's definitely something I'm gonna do. Finding your own circle and building with them from the ground up is definitely something big. Most artists and producers have their own team or they're part of a team. Even if it's not publicly facing, like everybody still has a support system of some kind. And lastly, we've got Halfway of Splitline. If you know Steven Shaeffer too, he's in Splitline as well. He's known for having songs with Tory Lanez, Kodak Black, The Baby, Blast, and a lot more. And he says, get in front of people, period. I always refer to LA as a hyperbolic time chamber. What you can accomplish here in 30 days will take a few years in your hometown. Most people aren't willing to make the leap anymore. And that's 100% facts. Like, there's a reason why everybody goes there. Like, it is the place to be as a musician, creative, fashion person, artist, actor, whoever. The creative energy there is crazy, and it's just such a vibe to be there. You know, it's a really good thing that we live in a social media age and we have the ability to grow an audience online and have our own community and our own income sources as small businesses. But at the end of the day, the music industry is all about connections. Like, unfortunately, a lot of it is about who you know. And it's just always gonna be a lot easier to network in person in the city where literally all the music is based in, period. Like, yeah, luckily it's possible to do it online. Like you can be in the DMs, you can be networking, you can be in group chats, all that. But like he says here, what you can do over there in 30 days would take you years just on your phone, wherever, anywhere else in the world. And yeah, that's all the advice from everybody. I appreciate all the producers who responded and got back to me and took the time out of the day to write back. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Let me know whose advice you liked the most down in the comments below, and I'll see you guys in the next one.